Hasna Karavita from Leo Club of University of Colombo. Welcome to 12th episode of Detect and Correct, which is the initiative taken by Leo Club of University of Colombo to discuss crucial and debatable topics in the present context. As you all know, by now, we are linking to two platforms, YouTube and our official newsletter, which is in written form, to make this discussion series easily accessible for you. Today, we are going to talk about addictions and mental health amidst the coronavirus pandemic. To talk in depth on this topic, we are collaborating with a great personality, Mr. Suchinthana Dasun, a psychologist, mental health and addiction counselor, and he is currently serving as the career counselor at University of Peradeniya. Sir, we warmly welcome you to Detect and Correct. In order to start the discussion, sir, I invite you to give a brief introduction about yourself.
Thank you, Hasna. First of all, thank you for having me in this session. I'm glad to join your newsletter through this interview to discuss mental health and addiction during this pandemic period. If I introduce myself, I'm Suchinthana Dasun. As you already said, I currently work at the University of Peradeniya as a career counselor. In my personal capacity, I practice as a mental health and addiction counselor. Yes, I graduated from the University of Peradeniya. My first degree is in psychology and my master's in organizational management, which is also from the same university. So a lot of things happened in my life around Peradeniya. But I spent 5 years in Colombo in my previous employment, which was at the National Dangerous Drugs Control Board, in short, Colombo, where I worked as an education officer at the education and training unit. In my personal life, I'm married and a father with a little one, 11 months old. Yes, that's it.
All right. Thank you for that introduction, sir. So, starting the session, first of all, let us start the discussion by sharing what your opinion is on having to do tasks in a virtual environment without being able to connect with people physically. So, when it comes to the current context, we have all transformed into a virtual environment, having to pass a high time of the days in front of a screen. So what we do is right now is same. So how do you define this context, sir, and what's your opinion regarding this transformation?
Yes, if I tell my opinion about working in a virtual environment without connecting with people physically, I have a kind of mixed feeling about that. If you ask me, I prefer, definitely, without doubt, I choose one-to-one contact in a physical environment where we can share more emotions and which is more human. But in this situation, with these circumstances, it doesn't matter what I like or what I prefer. Now I can't do things the way I like to do or how I used to do those things. This is an actually uncontrollable situation, not only to me, even the wealthiest person or richest billionaire in this world. It might be the most powerful political leader of the world, someone like the President of the United States. Even those people cannot control this situation. So this is an uncontrollable situation filled with uncertainty. That's the kind of situation that we are in. I told you in the beginning that I have mixed feelings about working in a virtual environment. I already told you the negative side of it, but there is nothing in this world that has only a bad side or only a negative aspect. Everything in this world has both good and bad, negative and positive. So, if you look at this new normal situation, where we are forced to connect with people using virtual platforms, we do have positive things. As an example, imagine you are doing this interview before the pandemic period let's assume in 2017 or 2018. We did interviews in a physical environment with one-to-one contact. If you wanted to do this interview at that time, possibility is high that you will not choose me, select me as interviewee, because you people are based in Colombo. I mean that you are from the University of Colombo, and I am 100 kilometers away from you. And but look at how this new normal changed the circumstances. How we are capable and adapted to have meetings or interviews without being restricted to time or space. The technology was there, it was already there, but we didn't use it. And it made us think and practice differently, forced us to look for new and creative solutions. Because of that, virtual technology is rapidly improving, and people are more prone to acquire those technological skills. So that's how I see it. I have to say that I have a kind of mixed feeling about this normal situation.
Yeah, it's a great startup that you mentioned that you have mixed feelings about the current context. So how does this transformation affect one's mental health, and what are the adverse effects of this transformation? Any idea about it?
Yes, Asna. Before we talk about the adverse effects on mental health, let me explain what mental health is. When we talk about mental health, there are mainly 5 components. If we get the definition of mental health, there are mainly we can break down that definition into 5 components. One of those 5 components is the ability to cope with day-to-day stresses. We know that all of us face stressful situations in our day-to-day life, and we get stressed. That might be an exam, a deadline, some family issue, or a stressful project at our workplace. Those kind of situations create stress. The person who has good, fine mental health can manage those day-to-day stresses without getting overwhelmed. So that is a part of mental health, which is that coping our day-to-day stresses. The second aspect of the mental health is one's ability to recognize their potentials. A mentally healthy person has good self-awareness. He or she knows about himself, herself, know their capabilities and strengths. So self-awareness is one of the major part in mental health. So let's go to the third aspect of mental health. It is that the third aspect of the mental health is productivity. Productivity means the ability of an individual to work efficiently within a given time. Let's assume there is someone who is best at something. Let's say writing project proposal to a club, want to do a project that implement a project within let's say 2 months of period, within 2 months. You have the best person to do that. That is the ideal person in project proposal writing. You give him the task, but this man you need that project proposal within 2 weeks. But this man take 1.5 months to complete it. So then there is a question whether that person is a productive person. Definitely, he is not a product. So productivity means work efficiently within a given time. So the productivity is also one of the major part in mental health. Fourth aspect of mental health is contribution to the community. A mentally healthy person helps and supports others without being a selfish person. When considering mental health, giving back to the society without being selfish. So this is another part. Finally, mental health means a state of well-being. What do we mean by well-being? Well-being means that in a simple way, it's feeling good. If your well-being is okay, you feel good, you feel comfortable and feeling happy. This is that we mean by the well-being. After you manage your day-to-day stresses, and when you know your abilities and you are productive and when you are actively contributing to this community, you start to feel good and happy. That's what we call well-being. So that's all about the mental health. We have 5 components. If we discuss adverse effect to our mental health with this new normal situation, circumstances have changed. The way people used to do things has changed, and new stresses like being stuck in a place without social contact cause more stress. But factors have changed. The method people used to perform their task at, in workplace, in education, or whatever the place that that life has changed. And we are forced to step away from our comfort zones and practice things differently. Sometimes the zone that we are stepping in might be a panic zone to someone, but this kind of situation, that if it is a panic zone, that might influence that person's mental health in a negative way. And those situations double the impact on children. That's one of the adverse effect on children. It's impact children more than adults. They didn't go to school or outside to enjoy life. It's around 2 years, for 2 years now. So these things negatively influence our mental health. Yes.
Exactly. So with the pandemic, the working from home and learning from home concept have arisen, resulting in high usage of technology and having to be stuck at home without being able to go out and connect with people. So what kind of mental conditions or addictions can result in this environment due to high usage of technology? So as an undergraduate, same we are doing is usage, like our usage of technology is really high. So what kind of mental conditions or addictions can result for this environment?
With this pandemic situation, the most prevalent mental condition among people is anxiety. If I define anxiety or simply describe the anxiety is a normal response to a threatening or challenging situation. In our day-to-day life, we face challenging and threatening situations, such as facing an exam, facing an interview, giving a public speech. When that incident happened, or when we completed or finished that specific task, we are not anxious anymore. So that's gone. But if someone gets anxious all the time about some specific event or generally everything about his or her life, that's not normal anxiety. We call that pathological anxiety. So that has become a disorder. This anxiety is always about uncontrollability and uncertainty. This is very important. This anxiety, the people get anxious because of uncontrollability. If the situation is uncontrollable or uncertain. If we can't control the situation, we get anxious, simply. And if we are uncertain or doubtful about the situation, we get anxious. So, exams, interviews are uncontrollable and uncertain events. All these events end at a particular time. When we faced the exam, that event is in our past. When we face the interview, there's not much to get anxious about further. But in this pandemic time, of more than 2 years, we are in an uncertain situation. For more than 2 years, we are in an uncertain situation. And we are uncertain about the present situation and also about our future with this pandemic. And obviously, this is uncontrollable. So you can see this pandemic is always making people anxious. The ones who can manage their anxiety will keep their mental health balanced. But some people cannot cope with this without support from professionals. That's about anxiety. That's a main thing with this pandemic, as if we talk about mental conditions. Another main mental condition that came into action more and more is addiction. There are different types of addiction, such as drugs addiction, sex addiction, gambling addiction, likewise. But at this special time, we have a special concern. People talk a lot about internet addiction. Yet there is no such classification. I mean, there is no such classification of mental disorder officially recognized mental disorder. But all psychiatrists and clinical psychologists agree that there is such mental condition, and soon that will be added to the list of, we call that DSM-5, Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. Soon that will be added. Anyway, there are at least 3 different types of internet addiction identified so far. 3 different types of internet addictions. First one is cyber sex addiction. Second one is video gaming addiction, and third one is online gambling addiction. So these are the 3 types of internet addiction identified. So this video gaming addiction, that people talk and that incidents are more and more reports in this video gaming addiction. So this new normal situation pushes people more and more towards internet addiction. If we talk about this, it is necessary to use these devices at this moment. With this situation, it is necessary to use these devices and the internet for work and education purposes. So people use these technologies for work and personal research, educations, and for everything all the time. And there is more time to spend scrolling through social media, and especially students are at risk. Yeah. So that's about the online addiction. And other than these conditions, there might be cases such as depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and etc. This kind of conditions. But anxiety and addiction are the most prevalent thing with this pandemic situation.
Exactly. So according to the current context, we saw some incidents that happened according to these addictions, online gaming and all. So next we have the most important question in today's discussion. So are there any ways or procedures to be followed in order to minimize these effects and addictions?
Yes. Very first thing, before we minimize, we have to identify whether we have a problem or not. This means be aware of ourselves and the loved ones who live with us. If we feel that something is wrong with us or a family member, we have to take some action. The real question is how we can identify whether we have such mental condition or not. I will give you some tips to identify those conditions, which are our main problems, anxiety and addiction. If it is an addiction, you can check for the following symptoms. How do I say? If someone stay online longer than he or she intended, then there might be a problem. And then if you hear other people in your life complain about how much time you spend online, then that might be a problem. And if someone try and fail to doubt on how much time he or she spent online, like now he or she need to stop what he's doing, reduce the time he spent online, but he tried harder but failed to cut down. So that might be an issue. And if there are difficulties in your personal and social life because of this online, then we all have our different roles as a student, as a family member, as a brother, sister, as a girlfriend, boyfriend, as a wife. We have different roles and duties. So if someone is skipping those duties, but someone not taking responsibilities in those roles, then because of this online life of that person, then definitely there is a problem. So if we can see that kind of symptoms in a person, then we should pay more attention. If it is anxiety, we talked a lot about anxiety. If it is anxiety, we can identify that anxiety with symptoms like feeling of nervousness, worry, panic and fear and unease, avoiding situations. Those are symptoms of anxiety. And difficulty sleeping, lack of sleep, and muscle tightness might be symptoms. Rapid or regular heartbeat. When it comes to anxiety, there are different categories or different types of anxieties. there is what called generalized anxiety disorder, which means the person is nervous or get anxious almost the whole thing about that person's life. And there is anxiety disorder called social anxiety disorder, which means that person is avoiding social situations like this. But in this case, this pandemic, generalized anxiety disorder might be the disorder that was prevalent. Okay, if this kind of symptoms present in someone, he or she needs definitely he or she needs professional help. Sometimes with this pandemic situation, that you cannot reach a psychiatrist or a psychological counselor physically, but we don't have to worry about that. There are online services that provide psychosocial support. If it is a problem of addiction, you can talk to the counselor through 1927. 1927 is the hotline now, National Dangerous Drugs Control Board. And there are such services in both government and private sectors. So if you search online, you can find these support services.
So, what are the measures an individual can take to maintain their mental health in a good condition in a situation like this, where one has to be isolated and face a lot of stress alone without having co-workers and a supportive work environment? What is the idea about it?
Yes, Asa. The measures we can take to manage the situation. Very first thing I need to say is that get physically active. Getting physically active. The research clearly shows that physical activity is a vital component of good mental health. So these are interconnected. Therefore, considering how we can get exercise right now and include it in our daily routine is very important. There are many home workout programs that will help us stay active. There are many free apps, videos, and fitness communities that can help us exercise even though we don't have any equipment. Depending on where we are, where we live, the law sometimes like in these situations there is a lockdown in Sri Lanka, so there is restriction, but we may be able to get outside to exercise when those restrictions are stopped. So if it is safe to do so, we can go for a walk or run, but you don't need a lot of space to exercise. It's not compulsory to go outside to exercise. You can still work out from our living room or bedroom or with little or no equipment at all. So that's not a problem. So getting physically active is the main thing that a person can do to manage their stresses. And maintaining social connections. This is also a vital part. Even when we can't physically be around, but we can still remain connected to friends, family and community. We can use social media to chat with relatives and friends. We can, let's say, post supportive comments, pictures and other content on Facebook, and scheduling regular video chats with friends, family members, with co-workers, likewise. And be supportive of others who may need social connection is also a good thing for others as well as ourselves. So always we need to share things, help others. So that will come back as a reward. And practicing good, healthy coping skills is also an important part. You may not have access to many of the coping techniques that typically help you handle stress, but the things like going to gym or visiting friends but it's important to think about the healthy coping skills. You'll Actually, you can explore new skills. You can practice, such as writing in a journal, and you might also can find meditation app or such thing, and practice a variety of relaxation techniques like progressive muscle relaxation. And we have to keep this in mind, that we shouldn't practice unhealthy coping skills. There are coping skills that healthy and unhealthy. The three people might be trying to rely on sometimes these things give comfort, things like food or alcohol, but these types of strategies can backfire and cause us feel worse in the long run. So we need to keep in our mind not to practice unhealthy coping skills like using alcohol or drugs. And finally, I want to mention that we need to keep the big picture in our mind. Although things may feel really stressful right now, the pandemic won't last forever. This will end someday. So we need to keep that big picture in mind. Someday we'll be talking about that what we did during the pandemic. Maybe we'll be telling the story of how we survived social distancing, or how we managed to get through this financially. So at some point, restrictions will end, and many of the issues we are stressing out about won't be the problems anymore. So keeping that in mind is the main thing we need to know to focus in our day-to-day things.
Yes, so we pretty much cover the measures an individual can take to maintain their mental health. So with that, we come to the conclusion of our today's discussion on addictions and mental health amidst the coronavirus pandemic. So thank you so much, Mr. Suchinthana Dasun, for joining us and for giving us the opportunity to conduct this important and valuable discussion despite your busy schedule. We really appreciate it. So thank you once again for your time, sir. We hope that you have gained good knowledge about people management and teamwork, which will definitely be an asset to your youth as well as for your future career. So till we meet with another interesting discussion of Detect and Correct, stay safe and goodbye.